My dear students, as a part of an interview preparation, it is very much important to set the stage, because without setting the stage, you would not conduct the interview in an effective manner. If you have ever watched a video of a DVD about employment interviewing, it probably did not reference the significance of setting the stage. Most of the people try to ignore this area. However, this area has a lot of significant importance. What that area is? That is the importance of allowing sufficient time for meeting with an applicant. This is one component, that you have to give sufficient time for meeting with an applicant for an interview and conducting that meeting in an appropriate environment. So two components. One component is allowing sufficient time for meeting with an applicant, and second, conducting the meeting in an appropriate manner or in an appropriate environment. So these two critical components are very much important for successful interviewing. So you have to keep these 2 points in mind. Let's discuss some of the details about these critical components. Number 1, allowing sufficient time for the interview. When determining how much time to allot for each interview, think about the entire process. Don't think about one particular question. Think about the entire interview process, not just the portion devoted to the face-to-face meeting. This is one portion then in which you are meeting the person face-to-face. But before it and after it, there are some other portions of the interviewing as well. So you have to keep whole of the entire process in mind while designing your interview time. Time is needed before the interview to review the application, because before coming the application into the interview room, you have to review the application or resume during the interview for both you and the applicant to ask questions and for you to provide information about the job and the company. There are some information which are miscellaneous information. There are some information which are quite basic information. And if you are not clear, then you have to ask those information before asking more professional questions during the interview. So you have to keep that time in mind as well. Considering all, that must be done. Just how much time should be set aside for each interview? You have to calculate the total man hours you are going to dedicate for that particular interview. How many hours you are dedicate for one interview? How many hours you are dedicate for the all interviews which you are conducting in one particular day? So it depends on the nature of the job as well. In the case of interviews for non-professional positions, for example, the positions for laborer or the workers or the positions which are not the executive position, approximately 45 to 75 minutes should be allotted, with 30 to 45 minutes for the face-to-face meeting. Total time 45 to 75 minutes, but out of that 45 to 75 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes would be allocated for face-to-face meeting and asking face-to-face questions which are more related to the job. It may also be that you are not adequately probing suspicious area, or perhaps simply don't know what question to ask. This is very tricky, my dear students, that you are an interviewer and you don't know what kind of question you need to ask. You are just confused. You are just unaware of the different critical questions you must need to ask during an interview. Or you are asking those questions which are not much important for the interview. So you need to probe the suspicious areas, and you need to ask more critical questions during the interview, but you need to prepare it beforehand. To help maximize the time set aside for meeting applicant, consider the 3 scheduling guidelines that follow. Number 1, ideally interview only during the time for day when your biological clock is at the peak. That is when you are most alert. So you have to know that what is your biological clock, what is the time when you are more active. There are some people which are quite active early in the morning. There are some people which are quite good in afternoon. So you need to identify your biological clock, and then you have to set interview schedule. Number 2, when you have a number of positions to fill and several applicants remain to be seen, try to take a 5 minutes break between interview. Because if you would continue interview people, the effectiveness of interview would go down. So it is better to take breaks in between one interview and the second interview, and then you have to schedule your interview accordingly. Then you have to send an email or the phone calls to the interviewee according to that particular schedule. And number 3, try not to conduct more than 4 or 5 interviews in one workday. So if it's a workday from 9 to 5 and your biology clock is for 4 to 5 hours, then it is not a good idea to conduct more and more interview. If you would do all these things in hassle, there are more probability of selecting the wrong applicant. And if you would select wrong applicant, it would cost very high to the organization. It would cost in terms of money. It would cost in terms of time. So these are the two major, most precious resources of an organization. So please keep this thing in mind. Whenever you have to interview it in a very judicious way. Give a proper time for the interview. Conduct the interview in the best environment so you can get the best qualified candidate for any particular position in your organization.